I'll see you guys in the dark.
My brother met his girlfriend a year ago when he was 17, and she was 16. For a little while, they seemed like they had a great relationship. My brother, Alan, and Jamie were always happy together, and Jamie made a real effort to get to know the rest of the family. However, I noticed something was off whenever my brother wanted to go out with his friends without Jamie, and she would have a complete meltdown, screaming about how he didn't love her, and how much she does for him, etc. This happened all the time, so eventually he started spending more time with her to avoid a conflict. She even got annoyed at my mother's funeral because he wasn't paying enough attention to her. Like, our mom just passed away. Chill out. Things started to get worse with her, accusing him of hitting her whenever he would try to deflect her from punching him in the face. My brother has some mild anxiety problems, and quilt about our mother's passing away. Since they weren't on the best of terms before she went, he uses Xanax or bars to try to self-medicate, which she knows and often would pick fights with him about to use his actions against him later on, or try to tell the school he was on something to get him in trouble when he didn't want to have anything to do with her. Eventually, Alan couldn't take it anymore and ended the relationship a few days ago. A quick note. Our glass back sliding door is pretty weak. If you yank at it hard enough, you can force it open despite it being locked, unless we put a key in. The other day, she showed up at 5 in the morning, banging on the door and demanding to be let in. My dad got after her, and she left. This morning, however, she broke in through the back door and got into bed with my brother, who slept through all of this. My dad found her and told her to leave, or he'd just call the cops on her. This afternoon, I heard my brother and his friend get back in from school. All was well until once again Jamie broke in through the back door, as she had taken the key this morning. Alan's friend stopped her from getting into his room, and I told her to leave and not come back again, or I was going to call the police. After she had left, my dad came back with 3 new keys made from the back door. My brother showed us her claims of cutting herself, which we reversed imaged and found it immediately, along with the fact that she didn't have any cuts on her arms. It's gotten so bad that my brother doesn't want to go to school since she follows him around and tries to get him to talk to her. And when that doesn't happen, she gets him in trouble. Jamie, I hope you get out of our lives and get the help you desperately deserve. I was a 24-year-old female, so my now ex-boyfriend used to live with me. We had very different schedules, so I was often getting home from work and being home alone. Note, I had to take the bus to and from work every single night. So one night, I was getting off of work, and I was waiting for my bus to take me home. Right off the bat, I noticed a woman staring at me. I tried to pretend that I didn't notice her. As soon as the bus came, I jumped on and headed towards the middle of it. I took a mental note of where the creepy lady was sitting, which she was about 5 seats away from me. Halfway through the bus ride, I saw the lady move up, so she was only 2 seats away from me. Red flags immediately went off in my head. I looked around as nonchalantly as possible to see if there was anyone else sitting on the bus. Just my luck, there was no one else on the bus with us. Pretty soon my stop had come up, and I stood up to get off. The creepy lady also stood up. Crap, I thought. I quickly pulled my phone out and texted one of my friends where I was. Now, I know it was stupid, but I didn't think to call or text my boyfriend. Once off the bus, I put my phone away. Big mistake on my part. I glanced around and saw the woman started to follow me. Now, I live about 7 to 8 minute walk from the bus stop to my house. I picked up the pace about 5 minutes away from my house. I felt a tap on my shoulder. The creepy lady. "Are you Courtney?" she asked me. "Yes," I answered shakily. A smile formed on her lips, and I noticed something glittered in her hand. I picked up my pace even more, and was almost jogging when I heard her call out, "Josh is mine! He is mine!" Josh was my boyfriend. I honestly at the time had no idea what she was talking about. I started to run. I ran all the way back to my house, in record time too. That crazy lady following me all the way there. I got into my house and locked the door just as the lady pulled on the handle. I grabbed my phone and saw 3 missed calls from Josh and 5 text messages. He was freaking out, saying how one of his exes was threatening to come after me and that he was coming home early from work. But luckily, just as I finished reading those messages, I saw headlights pull into my driveway and my boyfriend frantically yelling at the woman, telling her to get the hell out or he would call the police. She ended up running into the woods. Later that night, we called the police, but of course, nothing came of it. So creepy lady who was my boyfriend's ex-girlfriend, let's not meet again. So I matched with this girl on Tinder, Gina. Gina and I went on our first date on January 26th. She knew I was out of a long relationship and still maintained occasional contact with my ex, Mary. Gina and I officially started calling each other boyfriend and girlfriend around mid-February. 3 days ago, while I'm in the shower, she goes through my phone and reads old messages between Mary and I. A few casual ones and a few very affectionate ones from before Gina and I started seeing each other or even met. Gina packs all of her things and is headed out the door when I get out of the shower, with my phone. She texts a bunch of people saying things like, "I'm an asshole," and Mary is a manipulative girl. She hacks into my Facebook and makes a post of calling Mary a whole slew of names, and blocks and unfriends several of my friends, and does a similar thing with Twitter. I get a hold of a coworker's phone and use it to try and contact her and sign back into my Facebook. Once she realizes I did this, she changed my passwords, and my email's passwords as well. Eventually, she tells me she wants to talk this out, and to meet at my place. I play along so I can get my phone and passwords back. She gives me my phone and makes me call Mary and tell her I'm cutting her out of my life. I get a hold of Mary earlier and warned her something like this might happen. We both have a background in theater, so we had a very convincing argument over speakerphone so Gina can hear. Gina gives me my passwords, and I immediately change them. I tell her she should leave and doesn't understand why I want her out of my life. She goes home very upset about me breaking up with her over this. Gina starts posting and commenting on my Facebook, and I block her. I blocked her on everything, and she begins calling me over and over, not saying anything when I try to pick up the phone. I block her number. I start receiving the same calls over and over from a Colorado number. Eventually, I go to my phone provider and change my number. I also changed the locks on my door in case she took a key. Next day, she makes a Facebook page calling me a piece of shit and Mary a manipulative woman, and she hacks into my alternative Twitter account. I tell her if she calls me one more time or posts one more thing about anybody I know, I'm calling the police on her. I get an email saying that my application for a credit card has been approved. I call the bank and tell them what's happening, and they put a freeze on the account. Several friends have told me to call the police, and I finally realize enough is enough. The police come and tell me that she has some sort of file with them and that her name isn't even Gina. It's something completely different, though. They issue a warning of harassment, and if she tries to contact me again, I call the police and she gets arrested. On Monday, I have to call the fraud people and get all my accounts frozen and investigated and stuff. I realize this is a lot, but this is actually a pretty bare-bone version of this story. Basically, the reason I'm posting this is now the police get involved, and I have my locks changed, and my number changed, and all is solved. I'm starting to feel the emotional damage of being abused and harassed by someone I was really starting to care about, and I don't know how to deal with it. Someone on the other post called bullshit on this, so I proved them with some screenshots of the Facebook page she made of me, and the phone number she was calling me from that I have now blocked. I'm an aspiring comedian, so that's why the page calls me one. If you want some other form of proof, feel free to ask me. I know it sounds crazy, but that's because it is. I'll start by giving you some information about our relationship and what caused us to break up. I'll call her Crazy, as that's what she is. About 2 years ago or so, Crazy started calling and texting me after we had broken up for close to 6 months. At first, I just decided I was going to ignore her because I knew if I let her back in, things would just go to hell in a handbasket eventually. However, one night I had been drinking and got this lame sentimental feeling and decided to answer one of her texts. That was all it took. She started coming over, and eventually we ended up back together. We were together for close to 7 months before I finally got fed up with her and kicked her out of my apartment. She was physically abusive. If I didn't let her use my car whenever she wanted, give her money when she claimed she needed it, or basically do whatever she asked, she would have a tantrum like a 3-year-old and cause more drama than any one person could endure. During our time together, she managed to get herself in some real trouble after she beat some dude over the head with a beer mug at a local bar who we'd frequent. What really ended the relationship was when she started using drugs and was bringing that stuff into my home. I tried getting her help, but she turned it around on me as if I was trying to change her. So I gave up and told her mother she needed to get her daughter and get her out of my place before I called the cops and had her removed myself. I told her we were done, and I never wanted to hear from her again. At this point, I had given her multiple opportunities to change, but she refused. It made it seem like I was the problem. Whatever, I was done. The problem was, she wasn't. The day I finally ended it was the beginning of her tormenting. She started her attack by creating a Craigslist ad under the escorts section with a fake picture and my phone number as a contact. I received over 500 plus calls and text messages from random dudes looking to get some. This lasted for about a week before everything calmed down. If that wasn't enough, the same night while my phone is blowing up, I see the security guard from my apartment complex nosing around my car, shining his flashlight in the windows. I go outside and ask the guy, "Is there a problem?" He responds, "I got a report that this car here is abandoned and needs to be removed." I'm just like, that's my car, and I live in the apartment right above here. I ended up having to get my title and a driver's license to keep this guy from calling a towing company and having my things removed. The next day rolls around, still getting a massive amount of texts and calls through my whole workday, which was really pissing me off. I get home after work and sit down to try and relax when there is a knock on the door. I look out through the peephole and see some dude I've never met before standing outside. I don't answer. I wait for him to leave and then look out my balcony and see this guy on his phone standing right out front. I yelled out to him, "Hey, can I help you?" He responds, "Is Crazy here?" I'm just like, "No, that's my ex, and I kicked her out the other day. Maybe check her mom's house where she's staying." I end up talking to this guy further. Turns out that she set up a dinner date with him and gave the guy my address as an address to where she is staying. That night, another 3 guys showed up looking to have dinner dates with her. I had work the next day, and while I'm there, she starts sending me texts, pictures of the outside of my apartment with messages like, "It's quite breezy in the apartment with your patio door open, isn't it? And I hope your dog finds his way back home. He got out." So, needless to say, this is stressing me out. I'm almost positive at this time it's bullcrap, but there's always that chance Crazy actually broke in. I got home later to find my apartment the way I left it. The whole time, I'm ignoring her, hoping this will come to an end soon. Nope, it only escalates further. Once again, after work, I have a knock at my door while I'm watching TV. I check the peephole, and there are 2 police officers standing outside. I'm just thinking, now what the hell, as I'm opening the door, and I'm greeted by 2 relatively large gentlemen in uniform, with crappy looks on their faces. I'm just like, "Yes? Can I help you?" The officer asks me if I live here, Yes. Is there a problem, officer? He replies, only if you considered touching a young woman a problem. Can you provide your whereabouts for the last 2 hours? Well, I just got home from work like 45 minutes ago. What do you mean touching? Who told you that? This woman really stepped up her game, calling in a false police report and getting the cops to come question me about it. That was pretty bold of her. The cops respond, I'm not at liberty to provide that information, but will need for you to provide some proof that you weren't in the Galt area between the hours of 2 and 5 this afternoon. Now I'm actually starting to get really mad, knowing that I'm 100% innocent of this alleged touching. And so I kind of get an attitude, which didn't really help my situation at the time, but I calmly respond, if you want to go to my place of work and verify that I was there until 4, that will prove I had nothing to do with this. And furthermore, the person of accusing me of this crime are going to arrest them for filing a false police report, right? And what I heard next floored me. The cop says, I'm not so sure it's a false report. Your car is still warm, and you look guilty. Of course my car is still warm. I just drove home from work less than an hour ago, Einstein. Some freaking awesome detective work, Chief. They left, but before doing so, told me not to leave my apartment, as they would be back if my story didn't check out. Well, they never came back, and I called the police station multiple times to get an update on what they figured out. And you know, what they told me. No police report had been filed, and there was no record of any police being dispatched to my address on the day in question. I was seriously about to lose my shit. How can she continue to do this with no consequences whatsoever? Mind you, I'm still getting texts and calls. Less than in the beginning, but they are still coming in. I think it was like a week or so, and things went quiet. Minus the calls and texts, but even those weren't all that heavy anymore. I started to think that she was done with me, and I might be able to live my life normally, drama-free. Nope, I was wrong. I stop at my mailbox after work, about a week or so after the whole touching situation, and receive a letter from the post office that said I had changed my address, but if this was incorrect, to contact them to stop the mail forwarding. So I call them and tell them I haven't moved, nor have I filed out a change of address form, so there's no reason to forward my mail elsewhere. They assure me that my mail will continue coming to my current address, and that I had nothing to worry about. Well, they were full of it, because I didn't get a piece of mail for 2 months after that day. It took 3 phone calls and 2 visits to the local post office to get that stuff rectified. Now, had it not been me getting any mail, I wouldn't have been that mad about it, but once my mail was forwarded to the address where Crazy was getting it, she used that as an opportunity to get all my account information for the electric, gas, phone, cable, car, and banking information. I have extra security set up on my bank account, so that was safe, and my car payments weren't going away, but she managed to shut off my cable, my electric, and my gas. I also got phone calls from my phone company stating that changes would be applied to my account if I hadn't called. I was mad. I ended up paying an extra $300 in fees to get my gas and electric bills put back into my name, mainly because my apartment complex ended up paying the balances on both accounts and charged me for that. This was getting to be all too much. I tried calling the cops, and they just asked if I had gotten a restraining order. I explained that I tried, but she continued to evade being served, and after a period of time, if the person isn't served, the restraining order is no good. The response was, "We can't help you." Wow, thank you. Can't help me, but you follow up on a false police report, and then ignore that like it never happened? Gotta love the cops out here. However, I got a break. If you remember, she was arrested for smacking some dude over the head multiple times with a beer mug, right? Well, she finally had gotten convicted. It was given 3 months in jail for it. 3 months. Are you kidding me? There is no way I could go out and beat some guy with a glass object all willy-nilly and not go away for at least a year, if not longer. But somehow, she squeaked by with ease. Either way, That meant peace and quiet for at least that period of time. I was watching her status in jail online from time to time to make sure she was still locked up, when one day I checked and saw she had been released 2 days prior. In my head, I screamed as loud as humanly possible and started to get paranoid about this girl and what she might do next. Weeks went by and nothing. Finally, she's done. Given up. Or so I thought. A few weeks ago, it started with a text. A picture of a pregnancy test that showed positive. It came from a number I'd never seen, so I wasn't sure who it was, but I had my suspicions. Figuring it was her, I texted back saying, "Ha ha 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 ha! Finally, any ties to you I had are broken. Have fun with the poor schmuck who knocked you up." I got a response, "You obviously don't know who this is," which was true and really got me thinking, considering I had talked to a few other women since being with the ex. Either way, I ignored it and just hoped it would go away. Over the next week, after that, I kept getting texts. Only that one picture, nothing else. Once again, I kept ignoring until I got another text. This time it was a picture of a woman holding her stomach, showing that she was pregnant, minus the head. Immediately after that, another text saying, "I guess we know who the fertile one out of the two of us is." That there told me it was the ex, as we actually tried to have a kid, but never were able to. So I responded back, "Awesome. Have a good life with whatever schmuck you managed to get to impregnate you." Thankfully it wasn't me. "Now kindly, go away." She replied back with stupid insults that are irrelevant to the story, and I just ignored it, figuring she'd done what she wanted. Rubbed in the fact that I could possibly be sterile, which to me, that is a win-win. I can't have kids, and now she's got other stuff to deal with that'll keep her from bothering me. A week or so went by, and it's last week, Thursday. I am the type of person that tends to do stuff at the last minute, and when it comes to waking up in the morning to get to work, I sleep as late as I can, so when I get to my car, I need to leave right away, or I could end up being late. So I'm headed to my car, and notice something stuck to it. There are 3 magnets on my car with stupid slogans. I think one said something about being a cat lady or something. I really didn't pay attention as I peeled them off because I needed to get to work. What I did notice is someone super glued them to my car, so it wasn't easy getting them off. And I still have remnants of magnet on my car. That wasn't the worst of it, and to explain the second part, I must first tell a short story. I explained how crazy got into using drugs. Well, one day, when I allowed her to use my car, she went to meet her brother in his apartment. They got into an argument. He owed her some drugs. He didn't have it on him. She thought he did, though. In turn, the brother wanted to leave. In an attempt to stop him, the dude used my car to barricade him in. And when she did, he got out and kicked my driver's side window, and then got back into his truck and proceeded to run into my car until she moved out of the way. So, I didn't have a driver's side window for the longest time. He didn't have insurance, and is a freaking tweaker, so getting money for him to fix the window was pretty much impossible. I'm also lazy and do things at the last minute, so I never got it fixed. The weather in California allows me to drive around with a broken window and not worry about the interior of my car getting ruined. Anyway, back to last week, Thursday. I now have magnets stuck to my car, and I'm about to get in when I see approximately 5 pounds of dog crap with open condoms just chilling on my driver's seat. You've got to be freaking kidding me. So I think to myself, as I start to look for something quick to clean this stuff up. Literally, out of my car. There was a plastic bag on the ground, so I grabbed it, and thankfully, it was dry, so I was able to get it quick and get it off my seat. I'm sure I still ended up sitting on some of it, but I didn't have the time to freaking waste, so I already was late and needed to get to work. I got there and told my boss. Thankfully, he's a cool guy, and let me take the first half hour of work to clean it out. Needless to say, I have replaced the driver's side window on my car. Now I wait. Wonder what the hell this girl has in store for me next. My guess? Something even more messed up. Now, I'm going to get 2 questions. The first, why haven't I changed my phone number? And the second, why haven't I moved? To answer the first, I have too many people that know my current number, and I am not going to let this girl win by inconveniencing myself and changing it. Second, I plan on moving, but I don't have the greatest rental history, so breaking my lease wouldn't help that in any means. So I'm sticking it out and hoping crazy just goes away.
It was my 18th birthday, and as a newly minted adult, I was enjoying my grown-upness by getting as drunk as I could. I'm with my friends in this pub in town, and we're gathered around a table. There's maybe 6 of us in total. A couple of tables over, there's a group of girls, and there's maybe 6 of them. One of them catches my eye when I look over, and she's very stunning. Long red hair, bright blue eyes, full pink lips. I look away and carry on drinking, but she keeps catching my eye again and again. We do that thing where you both catch each other looking, then pretend you weren't looking at all whilst going and doing it even more. Eventually I need another drink, so I get up and head to the bar, and I notice her doing the same. At this point, I notice her body. She's short, but with a great figure. Breasts that are good and round and big. Small waist, wide hips, great butt, everything. I'm pretty much fully in lust with this girl, and we've not even met yet. We get to the bar, and I let her order before me. She gets something like a lemonade, unusual for that pub, but I figured someone's got to be a designated driver, and it's probably her. I order a pint for myself, turn around to head back, and she's there, right behind me. We get to chatting, and she tells me her name's Helena. I make some kind of Shakespeare joke, and she laughs, and I'm in. The rest of the night, I talk to mostly her, though it's cool, because the other lads have descended on the group of girls at the other table. The evening wears on, and eventually we get to the, well, are you going to do it? Or just agree to meet each other again? Or screw off and pretend this never happened stage. We go for the former. We go back to my place, being very careful not to wake my parents up because I'm still, well, shit, and live at home. And have a great night. Long story short, we ended up going out for a while, always out somewhere. Then headed back to mine. Eventually we drift into actually being a couple. From there we start to do more couple-y things, and that's when the crazy leaks in. She starts arguing with me about every little thing imaginable, from not saying hello in the right way, to not being there to wake her up at precisely 6:01 in the morning or whatever. Every argument escalates into whatever the heck she decides to rant about, and always ends the same way. She threatens to dump me. I coax her back. We kiss, do things. Everyone's happy. After maybe a month and a half of this or so, I get bored of it all. I do the decent thing and take her out for coffee to a cozy little cafe, tell her in the best way that I can that we're not working out, and it's all pretty surprisingly admissible. Except it's not. The phone calls start, always from a private number, always of crying. At first to my mobile, then to my home phone, always a private number, always crying. I know she's faking it, because if I never answer the phone, my parents would have a friendly little chat, then hand the phone to me, and immediately it's like the Niagara Falls of freaking tears. Then the emails. Weird, ranty emails of gibberish and threats and pleading to take me back. Hundreds of them. There'd be days when they'd come every 5 minutes. Days when there'd be nothing at all. I changed my number to get rid of her, got a whole new phone number, and we went X-directory with my number. Changed my email too. I still got them for about 6 months after, but eventually they just stopped. And that should have been the end of it. Little did I know. I started going online on various forums, games, etc. On one such forum, I struck up a friendly conversation with this girl on there. I know she was a girl because she showed me pictures of herself with a little scribbled, "Hi OFAB, I'm random username," and whatever, which is pretty conclusive, as evidence goes. We had a great time chatting and whatever, and we had so much in common, it was completely insane. Like, not only did she like the same things I did, but she was this utterly stunning little brunette, like a proper English rose. Anyway, eventually we started going out, having a little Skype chats. Things started out well, but over time, she got a bit too clingy for my liking. She'd ask me where I'd been if I was a minute late, or got jealous if she'd seen a picture of me on Facebook with another girl. She got upset at the slightest thing, or angry if I mentioned another girl's name, even if it was, "Oh, Louise said she liked my work," when Louise was the lecturer of my course. Eventually, I got angry, dumped her, and we had a nice clean break. I avoided those forums, changed my Skype, and that was that. Not learning my lesson at all. I went on different forums, found another girl, and got to know her too. This one was a tanned blonde, all boobs and legs, and sexy, Australian accent as well. She liked most of the same things I did, with enough difference that we would teach each other how to do things, how to appreciate things, how to like things. She was laid back too, and compared to the latest sex, she was a breath of fresh air. If I got on Skype half an hour later than I said I would, she would be cool with it. If I spent a conversation talking about my lecturer, using her name in every dozen words, she'd bitch along with me, making me laugh, making me smile, making me love. Eventually, I talked of meeting her, though it was a long way from England to Sydney, and expensive as anything. I was willing to fly to meet her because I wanted to see her face to face, to see the places she told me about, to go to the clubs and bars and restaurants she told me she loved. I wanted to hold her in my arms and kiss her and actually have a proper girlfriend again. She immediately broke up with me, saying I'd only be disappointed with the reality. Then came the latest girl. She was Canadian, brunette, something of a rock chick, completely different to my usual kind of girl. We met on some chat site I used when I was bored and got talking, swapped details, etc. She introduced me to a ton of music I'd never even considered listening to, and I did the same to her. If I complained about something, she told me to man the hell up. If I turned up late, she told me it was fine because time is something the man makes us believe in. She was the coolest freaking girl I'd ever known. Again, we dated on Skype and whatever. Again, we talked about meeting. Again, she broke up with me, saying that it had all just been in fun for whatever. It was cool. It was admissible, and fine, and that was that. All this happened over a couple of years, with me being with each girl somewhere between 4 to 6 months, and my between times maybe 1 to 3 months. I was a quick worker, and screw the rebound stuff. Anyway, I came back to my hometown for the holiday. I think it was reading week, or something like that. And being on campus then, I was wandering along the road, when who would I see but Psycho Girl? Rather than avoiding her, I carried on walking. She came up to me, said she had something to tell me, and we needed to talk, desperately. I made all kinds of excuses, but each one she batted aside until she wore me down. We went to the pub, and she told me something that basically terrified me. She hadn't wanted to give up on me, so she'd use what she knew of me to find places I'd go online. She'd made different accounts, lots of different accounts, in hopes that she'd find me, so she could talk to me and try to win me back. Except she'd make fake accounts, so I wouldn't immediately ignore her. See where this is going? Yep, every one of the girls I'd dated has been her, using pictures of friends, using fake accents, pretending not to know things she knew. She'd follow me across at least a dozen different websites, stalked me across hundreds of posts and threads, and all the time had made me believe I was talking to completely different women. I didn't date anyone for a couple of years after that. I don't know what came of her after that. She sort of disappeared from my life, and I haven't seen her since. I went out briefly with a couple of other girls, but only ones I'd met face to face, who didn't look anything like her at all. I don't know if she still follows me about online, or if she does, if she knows anything about this account. But if you're looking at this, hi Helena.
So I matched with this girl on Tinder, Jenna. Jenna and I went on our first date on January 26th. She knew I was out of a long-term relationship and still maintained occasional contact with my ex, Mary. Jenna and I officially started calling each other boyfriend and girlfriend around mid-February. 3 days ago, while I'm in the shower, she goes through my phone and reads old messages between Mary and I. A few casual ones, and a few very affectionate ones from before Jenna and I started seeing each other or even met. Jenna packs all of her things and is headed out the door when I get out of the shower. She's got my phone still. She texts a bunch of people saying things like, I'm an ass, and Mary is a manipulative bitch. She hacks into my Facebook and makes posts calling Mary a slew of names, and blocks and unfriends several of my friends. She does something similar with Twitter. I got a hold of a coworker's phone and used it to try to contact her and sign into my Facebook. Once she realizes that I did this, she changed my passwords and email passwords as well. Eventually she tells me that she wants to talk this out, and to meet me at my place. I play along so I can get my phone and passwords back. She gave me my phone back and makes me call Mary and tell her I'm cutting her out of my life. I got a hold of Mary earlier and warned her something like this might happen. We both have a background in theater, so we had a very convincing argument over speakerphone so Jenna can hear. Jenna gave me my passwords back and I immediately changed them. I tell her that she should leave, and she doesn't understand why I want her out of my life. She goes home very upset about me breaking up with her over this. Jenna starts posting and commenting on my Facebook, and I block her. I block her on everything, and she calls me over and over and over, not saying anything when I try to pick up the phone. I block her number. I start receiving the same phone calls over and over from a Colorado number. I live in Canada, and eventually I go to my phone provider and change my number. I also changed the locks on my door in case she took a key. The next day, she makes a Facebook page calling me a piece of shit and Mary a manipulative slew of insults, and she hacks into my alt Twitter account. I tell her if she calls me one more time or posts one more thing about anybody I know, I'm calling the police. I get an email saying that my application for a credit card has been approved. I call the bank and tell them what's happening, and they put a freeze on the account. Several friends had told me to call the police, and I finally realized that enough is enough. The police come and tell me that she has some sort of file with them, and that her name isn't even Jenna. It's something completely different. They issue a warning of harassment if she tries to contact me again. I call the police, and she gets arrested. On Monday, I have to call the fraud people and get all my accounts frozen and investigated and stuff. I realize that this is a lot, but this is actually a pretty bare bones version of the story. Basically, the reason I'm posting this now is that the police got involved, and I've had my locks changed and my number changed, and all is solved. I'm starting to feel the emotional damage of being abused and harassed by someone I was really starting to care about, and I don't know how to deal with it.
I once dated a stalker. However, what makes my story unusual is that she wasn't stalking me, although it ended up becoming my problem, as you'll see. Even though I wasn't the victim of her stalking, I didn't necessarily have a great relationship with her either. I met this girl, let's call her Annie, on a forum devoted to a video game we all loved. There were discussions about the game, and some light roleplay. This was about a decade ago, and I was young, stupid, had some problems that led to other poor decisions in my life, and had just ended my first serious relationship, which is due to this ex's bipolar disorder. Would have been an emotional roller coaster for anyone. Online, Annie was as sweet as could be, and was especially sympathetic about what had happened in my last relationship. claiming she had just gotten out of a chaotic relationship herself. We talked a lot, and we jokingly suggested getting together. Eventually, a major anime convention on the East Coast rolled around, and many members of the forum were attending, including myself, Annie, and the other person in this story, who I'll call Ron. I'd spoken to Ron a bit before the convention on the forum and AIM, and hadn't particularly liked him, but I didn't hate him either. He just seemed pretty standoffish and had a short temper. While he could be fun to talk to sometimes, I had to make sure to only talk about the sort of things we would on the forum, as you never knew what would set him off. The convention came, and Annie, Ron, and I all met in person for the first time, as well as some other members of the forum. I was there with another group, including my best friend, and had stated beforehand I'd be spending most of my time with them, but that I'd try to hang out with them when I could for photo ops and the like. However, upon meeting Annie, she immediately latched on to me, going on about how I was much cuter than she expected, and I was getting even sweeter in person than online. In hindsight, I can see she was playing on the vulnerability she knew I had, but at the time, I was immediately smitten. As a result, I spent most of the convention with her. I also spent a lot of time with Ron, who ended up being nastier in person than he was online, but for some reason, Annie adored him. Again, 20/20 hindsight. I think she thought that by fawning over me, she'd make him jealous, but he wasn't interested in the first place, so it didn't work. Well, the weekend came to an end. Near to the end of it, Ron was removed by security and banned from ever attending another after he beat the crap out of a girl who had tried to hug him. She had declined to press charges since he had asked her not to hug him, so she took part of the blame. With Ron out of the way now, Annie turned her focus entirely to me, or so I thought. By the end of the weekend, Annie had declared herself my girlfriend. You know how people talk about red flags? Annie might as well have been a living red flag. She called the shots throughout her short relationship, and when I said that, I mean I literally had no say in anything. She told me what our relationship status was, and when. She told me we were going out. Within days of that, she told me we were engaged. Because she lived in Ontario, and I lived in Maine, she refused to move for me. She demanded I move to Ohio with her. I didn't move, but I had begun making plans to do so when she abruptly told me, "This is all happening too fast. We're over." Well, no crap, it was moving fast. In the span of a week, we went from dating to engaged. And in less than 2 months, it was over. It was a wild ride, to say the least. And although I was upset at first when it ended, when I was in a better place mentally and emotionally, I was just immensely relieved to have her out of my life, or so I thought. The sign of things to come was when Annie admitted to me that the relationship with her girlfriend back home that she had claimed she had ended badly actually hadn't ended at all. But she totally intended to break it off before I got to Ohio. Shortly after that was our breakup, and then I started to get messages and calls from Ron. Apparently, although Annie was posting publicly everywhere on various social media her relationship status with me, she was actually bombarding him with instant messages, texts, and phone calls, professing her love to him and promising that she would drop me in a hot minute if he gave the word. He repeatedly told her he wasn't interested, blocked her on AIM, blocked her number, and left the forum. Ron messaged and called me to inform me of this. Although I told him repeatedly we'd already broken up, he seemed to believe Annie's behavior was my fault, and that it was my job to rein her in, although he never came out and told me so. I think Annie was telling him lies about me. As I later found out, he was trash-talking me elsewhere. Somehow, this convinced him that I was somehow responsible for Annie's stalking, and that I could put a kibosh on it if I wanted. I repeatedly told him we'd broken up, we weren't even speaking anymore, and if she was posing a serious problem, to call the cops. So here I am, with Annie stalking Ron, Ron blaming me for stalking while semi-stalking me. I have no idea how to get out of this. Annie actually moved to the state that Ron lived in, and started running into him in public places everywhere he went. She followed him home and would try to visit, insisting that she wasn't pursuing him. They were just friends. He told her to screw off in no certain terms. But undeterred, Annie still kept coming to his house, sometimes when he wasn't there, and Ron was still somehow convinced this was all my fault, so it was my responsibility to fix it. I changed my number eventually, as well as my online presence so that he wouldn't be able to find me on social media or the like. I really don't know how things ended with Ron and Annie. As I said, I eventually found Ron trash-talking me elsewhere, but it was for reasons unrelated to Annie. For 2 years, this guy carried a grudge against me because of my brief association with a crazy girl who was fixated on him. About a decade later, I've seen no sign of Ron or Annie anywhere online. I even went to the convention again the year after I met Annie, and although I had some issues regarding another relationship while there, I never saw Ron or Annie. So Ron, while I hope the stalking thing ends peacefully, and nothing bad happened to you, and Annie, let's not meet again. So I started dating this girl when I was 17. She was the same age. When I met her, she seemed like a very outgoing person, and above all, a strong person. About a month into us dating, she said to me that she had to tell me something about her past, which she had been afraid to tell me. At this point, all sorts of thoughts raced through my head, but none compared to what she told me. She told me that when she was a younger girl, 13 I believe, that she started dating an older guy who was 17. Being so young, and dating such an older, mature guy, she felt very proud, and like a big woman. For a while, it was fairly normal. They dated, fooled around. However, one day, she was in a shopping mall with some friends. She had been texting the guy, and he had come to the conclusion that she might be with another dude. He followed her to the mall, and when he saw her, pulled her into a bathroom. This is a turning point in the story. From what I remember, she said that he was violent with her, and threatening her. She didn't break it off with him because she was young and naive. She carried on like normal, and thought nothing of it, until one day when she was home alone. This guy, whose name I don't know, came into the house and tied her up. He then did horrible things to her, untied her, and threatened her once again. This happened frequently, over a period of weeks, until she was tested and found out that she was pregnant. Without telling her parents, she got an abortion, and as a result of the threats, allowed this to carry on. Sometime later, she was tested again, pregnant again, abortion again. By this point, she was in tears telling me this, and I didn't say anything but let her carry on. She said she told her friends of what had been happening, and they were horrified of what they heard. This stalker, sick individual had been a part of their lives for a few months now, and nobody knew. But her, of course. They decided that their best option would be to go to the police and report what has been happening. They stopped to eat food, and through a series of events, I am unclear on how he showed up. He snagged her and took her back to his house. For the next 2 days, she was locked in a closet with no food, until the police raided the house and arrested the individual. By this point, she was 14 years old, and he was 18. This young man was not charged, believe it or not. Instead, he was shipped off to the military where he served for several years. At this point, I had my mouth wide open, near tears myself, and no way to express what I thought. I have spoken to both her parents, who confirmed everything. I let her know I didn't feel any different about her. I thought the story ended here. But alas, there was one final twist which was no witness to it. I was at her house, talking to her several months later, when she got a message on MSN. She didn't recognize the address and asked me if I knew who it was. I didn't, and noticed this individual was being very rude and speaking with an air of superiority. Then she realized who it was, and I spoke with him myself. I informed him that I knew who he was and what he had done. He seemed proud of all of this, mocked me with vulgar comments too rude for this subreddit. He laughed and threatened us, and basically said he would find us. Basically was all I would have expected from what she has told me. I believe that to this day, she hasn't heard anything else from him, though I can't be quite sure. So just a couple minutes ago, my girlfriend Gemma gives me a call. We live about 200 miles apart. However, the majority of the time we are together as we go to the same university. I'm home for Christmas, and she rings often just to hear my voice, as she feels lonely a lot of the time since I'm usually always there. So she calls me, and I answer. She's on her way to work, and she couldn't have called me earlier as I had a friend I was catching up with in my hometown, and she doesn't like to disturb me when I'm doing so. Anyway, she rings me, and we begin talking about trivial stuff. The how's your day been? I miss you. Typical kind of small talk, I guess. She's walking through the town center when a man walks up to her and says hello. Now, if any of you live in a city, you know this will either be a person asking for money or someone trying to sell you something. However, this time, it's a strange man wearing regular clothes and talking to Gemma in the middle of a city. He says hello, to which Gemma responds with, hello. He then asks something along the lines of, are you going clubbing? Somehow mistaking Gemma's work clothes for clubbing clothes. She responds with no, I'm going to work, to which he responds, oh cool, where do you work? She responds with the club name that she works at, to which he responds, mind if I come talk to you there? I was listening to all of this, like, what the hell? Gemma responds, I'm actually on the phone with my boyfriend. I've really got to go. Her shift started at 7 p.m. and ends at 1 a.m. He says, oh, okay, before saying, maybe I'll see you later. She's now really nervous, and she realizes in hindsight that she shouldn't have said where she worked as of now. This potential stalker has a starting point. I asked if she was okay, and she said she was. I've also told her to walk home with a coworker, or even ask someone for a ride or get a taxi. As I said, this happened minutes ago, and I asked her if it would be okay to share this story and possible updates. We're both scared for her. It really doesn't help that I've been listening to creepy IRL stories about all sorts of things, most of which creepy stalkers for the past couple of days, so I'm on edge. This might be the end of this post, but I'll update it anytime anything happens. This may not be the end. Update. It's been half an hour since her shift was supposed to end. She was supposed to ring me the second she got out. I'm starting to get worried, and for those wondering if her phone was dead, it wouldn't take long for her to get home and either charge her phone or get on her PC. Update 2. She's rang now, safe and sound. The man never went to her work that she knows. She was round the back the entire night. As a result, even if he did show up, she wouldn't know. No one was waiting for her. A couple of co-workers didn't turn up, so she stayed an extra hour. However, I'll still update this post should anything happen, as she has a shift tomorrow night as well.
If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos, and become a stalker of the night. And I'll see you next time.